He held it above his head with both hands. One single sheet of paper, a SWIFT banking confirmation, the official international wire transfer record, printed on federal letterhead. And Congressman Ted Lieu stood at his microphone, held that document where every camera in the room could see it, and asked the question that would produce the longest silence in congressional hearing history. Mr. Miller, on April 3rd of this year, $6.2 billion was transferred from a Department of Homeland Security Emergency Operations account to a corporate entity registered in the Cayman Islands. One wire transfer, $6.2 billion, to an offshore tax haven. I have a very simple question. He set the document down on the table in front of him. Who received $6.2 billion? Miller's face went completely still. Not pale, not shocked, still. The specific stillness of someone who just watched the one document they hoped would never surface appear on a screen in front of 40 cameras and every member of the House Oversight Committee. His lead attorney's hand froze mid-word on his legal pad. His second attorney closed her eyes for a full 3 seconds, like she was calculating something, like she was hoping that when she opened them, the document would be gone. It was not gone. And Lieu, former Air Force prosecutor, the man who spent years building cases in military courts that could not be broken, had not even mentioned the shell company yet. Let me take you back to how this moment was built. House Oversight Committee, room 215-4, Monday afternoon, 2:47 p.m. Eastern. The hearing was listed as oversight of DHS financial management and international transaction compliance. Boring enough to keep attendance minimal. Specific enough that anyone who understood what was coming knew exactly what this was about. Lieu had subpoenaed Treasury records 6 weeks earlier. Treasury fought the subpoena for 3 weeks. A federal judge ordered compliance. The documents arrived 4 days ago. Lieu spent those 4 days building the case that was now sitting in a folder on the table in front of him. Miller arrived looking composed. 3 attorneys, all expensive. He had prepared for budget questions, contractor payment inquiries, emergency authorization procedures, standard hearing mechanics. He had done this before. He knew how committees worked. He did not know about the Treasury database search. The first hour was standard, policy questions, enforcement priorities, budget line items. Miller answered everything with precision. He cited regulations correctly. He checked his notes. He looked to anyone watching the first 60 minutes like a man who had nothing to hide and knew it. Then Lieu took the microphone. Mr. Miller, his voice was calm, level, the voice of someone who has presented evidence in dozens of courts and understands exactly how to construct a case for maximum clarity. The Treasury Department maintains records of all international wire transfers over $10 million. It is called the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. All banks operating in the United States are required to report these transactions. The reports go into a federal database, and that database can be searched by congressional investigators with proper judicial authorization. He opened a folder. I searched that database. I limited my search to wire transfers originating from Department of Homeland Security accounts. I further limited it to transfers over $1 billion sent to financial institutions in countries classified as offshore financial centers by the Treasury Department itself. Do you know what I found, Mr. Miller? Miller leaned forward slightly. Congressman, DHS processes thousands of financial transactions on a daily basis. International payments for various operational needs require. I am not asking about thousands of transactions. Lieu's voice stayed completely level. I am asking about one transaction, April 3rd of this year. $6.2 billion. One wire, the largest single international wire transfer in the history of the Department of Homeland Security. He pulled out the first document and held it up. This is the SWIFT confirmation, the official banking record for the transfer. $6.2 billion sent from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York on behalf of the Department of Homeland Security. Receiving institution, Cayman National Bank, Georgetown, Grand Cayman. That is not a routing error. That is not a processing anomaly. That is $6.2 billion of American taxpayer money sent to an offshore account in a jurisdiction specifically classified as a tax haven by the United States Treasury Department. On 160 said it. Mr. Miller, Why did DHS send $6.2 billion to the Cayman Islands? The room went completely silent. Not polite, not anticipatory, heavy, oppressive. The silence of 40 people who just heard something that sounds profoundly, fundamentally wrong and are waiting to find out whether the explanation is worse than the question. Lieu reached back into the folder. I did what any prosecutor would do. I traced the receiving entity. The wire transfer lists the recipient as Hemisphere Strategic Solutions. I searched corporate registries in the Cayman Islands. Hemisphere Strategic Solutions was incorporated on March 27th of this year, 7 days before receiving $6.2 billion in federal funds. The company has no employees on record, no physical office address, no documented business operations of any kind. The registered agent is a corporate services firm that manages 14,000 other shell companies at the same address. He looked at Miller. $6.2 billion in taxpayer funds went to a company that did not exist 2 weeks before it received that money and has conducted no documented business operations in its entire existence. Who owns Hemisphere Strategic Solutions? He opened another document without waiting for a response. To authorize a wire transfer of this magnitude from a DHS account, federal regulation requires 3 signatures: the DHS Chief Financial Officer, the Treasury Department, and the Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy. He paused. This is the authorization form for the April 3rd transfer. Signed by the CFO on April 1st, signed by Treasury on April 2nd, and signed by you, Mr. Miller, on April 3rd at 9:47 in the morning. He held it up toward the cameras. Your signature authorized $6.2 billion to move to a company incorporated 7 days earlier with no employees and no business operations. 4 hours after you signed, the wire was sent. So I am going to ask you again, who received the money? Miller opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His attorney whispered something urgent into his ear. Miller shook his head slightly, a small, almost imperceptible movement. And that is when the silence started. Lieu reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, opened the stopwatch, held it up where the cameras could see it clearly, pressed start. 10 seconds. Miller's hands flat on the table. 20 seconds. His lead attorney writing something on the legal pad, crossing it out, writing again. 30 seconds. A Republican committee member broke the silence from his seat. Ted, are you telling us that $6.2 billion went to a company that was created a week before the transfer? Lieu nodded without breaking his focus on Miller. 7 days, incorporated March 27th. Wire sent April 3rd. Wire sent April 3rd. 40 seconds. Miller said nothing. 60 seconds. 1 full minute. Lieu lowered the phone slightly. Who owns Hemisphere Strategic Solutions? Where did $6.2 billion go? 70 seconds, the committee chairman leaned forward. Mr. Miller, this committee is asking about $6.2 billion of taxpayer money. You signed the authorization. You owe this committee and the American people a direct answer. 80 seconds, Miller's jaw clenched. The cameras caught it, every camera in the room. 90 seconds, Lieu checked the stopwatch. 1.5 minutes, he began walking slowly toward the center of the room. Mr. Miller, let me tell you what else I found, because I did not stop at the wire transfer confirmation. 100 seconds, I traced what happened after the money arrived in the Cayman Islands. Hemisphere Strategic Solutions held $6.2 billion for exactly 72 hours, 3 days. Then the money moved again. The entire amount transferred to 4 separate accounts in 4 different countries. 110 seconds, $2.1 billion to Switzerland, $1.8 billion to Singapore, $1.4 billion to Luxembourg, $900 million to Dubai, 4 offshore financial centers. 4 accounts protected by banking secrecy laws that make recovery nearly impossible once funds are settled. 120 seconds, 2 full minutes, and here is what should concern every American watching this. Those 4 accounts share identical beneficial ownership structures. The same person or group of people controls all 4 accounts. $6.20 billion moved to the Cayman Islands, split into 4 pieces, all controlled by the same beneficial owners. 140 seconds. Who are those people, Mr. Miller? 160 seconds. Liu stopped walking and stood still in the center of the room. I have been doing this for 25 years. I have prosecuted fraud cases, money laundering cases, corruption cases at multiple levels of government. And I have never seen a wire transfer this large disappear into shell company structures this quickly, unless someone was working very hard to prevent the money from being traced. 180 seconds. 3 full minutes. You signed the authorization form. You approved $6.2 billion moving to a company that did not exist a week earlier. And you are now sitting silent in front of this committee rather than explain where the money went. That silence tells me you know exactly who received it. And you know that if you say their names in this room, this becomes a criminal investigation before the end of the day. 200 seconds. A Democrat from New York stood from her seat. Mr. Chairman, we are watching obstruction of a congressional proceeding in real time. 210 seconds. Liu reached into the folder one final time. Mr. Miller, I also subpoenaed your calendar and building security records. On March 28th, one day after Hemisphere Strategic Solutions was incorporated, you held a meeting in your office. That meeting does not appear on your official DHS calendar, but building security entrance logs show 6 people entered your office suite that afternoon. 3 were attorneys from a law firm that specializes exclusively in offshore corporate formation and asset protection structures. 2 were principals of a private equity fund currently under active SEC investigation for undisclosed offshore holdings. And 1 was a foreign national whose visa application generated a flag in federal databases as a potential intelligence concern. 220 seconds. You met with these 6 people one day after the shell company was created, 6 days before you signed the wire authorization, and 3 weeks before $6.2 billion disappeared into the Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore, Luxembourg, and Dubai. 240 seconds. 4 full minutes. Liu stopped moving entirely. Mr. Miller, I am going to count to 253, and when I reach it, I am going to move to hold you in contempt of Congress and refer this entire matter to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation under federal money laundering statutes. 245. Miller's fingers pressed tight against the table surface. 248. His second attorney had both hands in her hair. 251. His lead attorney made one last attempt to whisper something. Miller did not respond. 253. Liu stopped the timer. He looked at the display for a moment. Then he looked up at the committee. 4 minutes and 13 seconds. He turned to the chairman. The witness has refused to answer. I move to hold Stephen Miller in contempt of Congress. I further move to refer this matter immediately to the Department of Justice for criminal investigation under federal money laundering statutes, specifically 18 U.S.C. 1956, and under federal conspiracy statutes 18 U.S.C. 371. I further move to request that the FBI obtain and preserve all international banking records related to Hemisphere Strategic Solutions and the 4 receiving accounts in Switzerland, Singapore, Luxembourg, and Dubai before those accounts can be moved or closed. All 3 motions were seconded within seconds. All 3 passed unanimously. Miller sat completely motionless as each vote was called. His face had not changed expression in 4 minutes and 13 seconds. His attorneys were writing. His lead attorney filled an entire page of the legal pad in the time it took the votes to conclude. Liu gathered his documents, picked up the SWIFT confirmation from the table, held it up one final time, facing the cameras directly. 253 seconds. That is how long you sat protecting whoever received $6.2 billion. But wire transfers leave permanent trails. SWIFT confirmations exist in federal banking databases. Corporate registries in the Cayman Islands are searchable. The 6 people who entered your office on March 28th, we have their names from building security logs. We have footage from the entrance. We have visitor records. And the FBI is going to interview every single one of them before the end of this week. He set the document down on the committee table. $6.2 billion moved through a 7-day-old shell company into 4 offshore accounts, all controlled by the same beneficial owners. Your signature is on the authorization form. Your meeting with the law firm and the foreign national is documented in building security records, and 253 seconds of silence is now part of the permanent congressional record. He looked directly at Miller one final time. Federal prosecutors are very good at following money, and $2 billion leaves a very large trail. The DOJ referral has been filed. The FBI preservation request is active. And the identity of whoever those 4 accounts belong to is going to be the next thing this committee makes public. Subscribe now and turn on notifications. Because the documentation trail on $6.2 billion does not end in the Cayman Islands, it ends with names, and we are very close to those names.